Welcome to this Good Friday Hope to Go. You know, in John 19:28, Jesus recorded this word, I thirst. Now, I thirst is the fifth of seven last words of Christ from the cross of Calvary. The hours of torture on the cross took a tremendous toll on the body of Jesus. Now, execution by crucifixion was not a sudden death like being shot by a firing squad. It was a long, drawn out, lingering death carried out under the eastern sun. Thirst is a horrible thing. Organs shut down, functions begin to fail, and those who claim to know say that death from thirst is an extremely painful and slow way to go. As we reflect on the suffering of Christ, we become acutely aware of the very real and very physical suffering he truly went through. The body dries up when deprived of its most vital element. And I believe God inspired John to write what Jesus said here to show people that the pain that Jesus went through on the cross was real. The humanity and suffering of Jesus was real. When Christ went through the temptation in the wilderness for those 40 days, the hunger that Christ went through for the period of time was real. That's why Satan tried to tempt Jesus to turn stones into bread. Satan knew that Christ was fully human and experiencing the pain of hunger like any human would who had had no food in 40 days. That's why Satan took him to the highest point of the temple and tried to get him to throw himself off the temple and test God, who would save him. The last reason that I believe that God inspired John to record this statement is probably the clearest in the text to show us that through the fulfillment of Scripture that he was indeed the Messiah. In John 19:28, it said, and so that the Scripture would be fulfilled. Jesus said, I thirst. You see, in Psalms 22:15, it predicted thirst of Christ when it said, my strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. In Psalm 69:21, it says that they put gall in my food and gave me vinegar for my thirst. The sour wine was essentially vinegar. Psalm 69:21 had predicted the suffering servant of Israel would say, they gave me vinegar for my thirst. Jesus knew for him to do his Father's will would require him to fulfill all that had been prophesied of the Messiah down through the ages. Both of these Psalms begin with the sufferings of David, but have their full meaning in the sufferings of Jesus. The greatest thing to me is that even at his point of greatest pain and suffering, that Christ would make sure that every prophecy is fulfilled. Max Lucado, theologian, he said this in his book, He Chose the Nails. He says, why in his final moment was Jesus determined to fulfill prophecy? He knew we would doubt. He knew we would question. And since he did not want our heads to keep his love from our hearts, he used his final moments to offer proof that he was the Messiah. And this hope to go, the good news of Good Friday. Number one, I want you to remember Jesus' death on the cross screams, he loves you. Romans 5:8. But God demonstrates his own love towards us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Wow. Jesus' death shouts an amazing message. I would rather die in your place than live without you. And number two, Jesus' resurrection, it screams, he alone can change you. Romans 6:4 says, just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so also should we walk in the newness of life. Jesus gives you a brand new start. And if God can come to earth, live and die as a man, and raise Jesus from the dead, which is impossible, then he can change you. So the good news of Good Friday is the bad news is not true. And that's your hope to go.